Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be talking about some new updates from the Delphi trial. So, recently, the Delphi trial jurors hear from blood specialist who says Libby Gurman was likely dragged. The third week in a double murder trial of Richard Allen began with testimonies from forensic scientists who examined a key piece of evidence that allegedly tied Allen to the killings of Abigail Williams and Liberty Gurman, and a blood specialist who testified that one of the teens was likely dragged to the spot where she was found. Major Patrick Serio of LaPorte County Sheriff Office told jurors he believes the killer slashed Libby's throat and then pulled her by the arm, which was lying above her head, when first responders found her in Abbey in the woods next to Deer Creek, just south of Delphi Cemetery. Serio said he drew his conclusion based on a blood stain on Libby's foot, indicating she stepped on blood, and because he would have expected to see more blood around her body. Also, another thing about this trial, it's not televised, and it's not live on YouTube. Another thing that I saw about this is that the judge is scolding people for going to sleep in the courtroom. Continuing. Abby, on other hand, was likely deleted on the same spot where she and Libby were found. Curio said he believes the lack of blood on Amy's hands suggested she was either restrained or unconscious when the killer slashed her throat. This is because it's unusual for people who are injured in that way not to touch their wounds in response. Serio's testimony gave some of a few revelations during Monday's proceedings. Allen, 52, is facing 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of murder while kidnapping the girls. Prosecutors allege that he followed the girls while they were traveling in Manon High Bridge trial, February 13, 2017, threatened them with a pew-pew, a gun, and forced them into the woods where he killed them. Abby and Libby were found, and following the day, bloodied with their throats slit. This is very graphic, of course, and these are some details about what they're discussing in the trial, how they were murdered. And from Allen's defense team, they have maintained that he is an innocent man caught in a messy police investigation that's been marred by war between federal and local law officials. His attorneys have insisted, alleged by Abby and Libby, were killed by Odinists, members of a pagan Norse religion hijacked by extremists in a ritual. That is something I have not have heard. Interesting. Special Judge Francis Gull has so far prevented Allen's attorney from presenting their theory to jurors. I understand that is something I have never heard of before, saying they have not produced admissible evidence linking Odinism or Odinists to the killings. The long-awaited trial comes more than 7 years after the girls' deaths and 2 years since Allen's arrest in 2022. And now I'll be talking about the DNA evidence. Indiana State Police forensic scientist Stacy Boznavsky testified Monday that she did not find enough DNA material from the unspent round recovered at the crime scene to develop a DNA profile. Stacy, who specializes in paternity or kinship analysis, testified that she took a swab of the entire surface and tried to collect potential skin cells, but said it's difficult to obtain DNA samples from such a small item. Prosecutors have alleged that the Indiana State Police firearms examiner testified last week that the unspent round had been cycled through the same Sig Saucer Model P-22-6 40 caliber handgun that Allen owns, and that is very big evidence right there. Stacy also testified she did not find evidence that the teens were assaulted. She said she tested samples taken from the girls, including certain parts and swabs and fingernail scrapings, and did not find anything that would indicate that assault occurred. There was some male DNA from the samples taken from the girls, but she said the amount she detected was not unusual and could have been passed on from normal day-to-day contact. A strand of hair discovered around Abby's finger, initially found to have belonged to an unknown female, likely Libby's relatives, Stacy testified. Earlier this month, Stacy determined the DNA profile was consistent with Kelsey Siebert, Libby's older sister. Stacy said she was able to conduct further testing after Siebert provided hair samples. And that is interesting to see how the DNA situation played out, and whoever did this masked their identity. And also at the same time, if somebody is not already in the system, they may not be able to figure out who it is exactly. And also, as they're saying, that there just wasn't enough there to build a profile on the person. And it's interesting also to see exactly how this played out through DNA analysts. This next part, we'll be talking about an interesting situation with his confession or innocence. Delphi jurors saw dueling images of Richard Allen, one who claimed innocence, one who confessed. Jurors in the double murder trial of Richard Allen were presented Tuesday with two opposing portrayals of the defendant, a man who again and again denied killing Abby and Liberty Gurman during two heated police interrogations, and a man who repeatedly confessed to the deletion while on self-deletion watch in a state prison. The long day of testimonies began with showing of two lengthy video interrogations of Allen, one October 13, 2022, another on October 26, 2022. Both interrogations started cordially, but gradually grew more and more confrontational as investigators pressed Allen, who definitively maintained his innocence. The first recorded interview ended with Allen hurling a vulgar word at the investigators. The second ended with both Allen and his interrogator throwing curse words at each other. Presenting the videos to the jury of 5 men and 7 women marks the first time they heard Allen's voice. Allen, 52, is facing 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of murder while kidnapping the girls. Prosecutors allege he followed Abby, 13, and Libby, 14, on the Monon High Bridge on February 13, 2017, threatened them with a gun, pew-pew. Also, pew-pew is a code name for a gun, and forced them into the woods where he murdered them. The teens were found the next day lying near Deer Creek, just south of Delphi Cemetery. Their throats had been slit. Allen's defense attorney have maintained he's innocent, an innocent man caught in a messy investigation that's been marred by the fighting among enforcement officials, as I said before. The case against Allen relies partially on an unspent round found in the crime scene that prosecutors allege had been cycled through his handgun, and on an incriminating statements he made while in custody of the Indiana Department of Correction. Jurors on Tuesday heard from several prison officials who testified that Allen repeatedly told them he murdered Abby and Libby, confessions that coincided with the bizarre behavior. Quote, "I murdered those girls, so I have to delete myself," Allen said on April 10, 2023, when he was incarcerated on the Westville Correctional Facility, they say. Allen's long-awaited trial, which has attracted international attention, comes more than 7 years since the girls have been murdered, and 2 years after his arrest. And also, it says, quote, I did not murder the 2 little girls. Allen repeatedly denies crimes in intense interrogation. Indiana Police Lieutenant Jerry Holman's 26th of October 2022. Interrogations of Allen began with some small talk about pew-pews and shootings, but the interview became more acrimonious as Hellman repeatedly confronted Allen with the forensic examiner's findings that investigators said tied his Sig Saucer pistol to the crime scene. Science doesn't lie, Holman said. For 2 hours, Holman kept confronting Allen with the forensic finding, but Allen did not budge. Over and over, he said the unspent round could not have been from his pew-pew. At one point, Allen said anyone who knows him can attest he's not capable of murdering people. He also denied knowing Ron Logan, who owned a property not far from where the girls' bodies were found. Quote, I did not murder the 2 little girls, he insisted. Holman later sought to reassure Allen that he doesn't believe he's a bad person. Quote, what kind of good person murders 2 people? Allen asked. Good people make bad decisions all the time, Holman said. And this is very intense. This interrogation, it's very intense. As they say, being put on the hot seat. In the middle of the interrogation, Holman brought in Allen's wife, Kathy Allen. The 2 hugged and sat next to each other. Allen tried to reassure his wife that he was innocent. Quote, I am not going to say something that isn't true, he told her. I didn't murder anyone. Kathy Allen asked her husband how a round from his pew-pew ended up at the crime scene. Richard Allen said he does not know. Interesting. As the video played in the downtown Delphi courtroom, Kathy Allen watched teary-eyed. Richard Allen, wearing a checkered lavender shirt with his glasses perched on his head, looked over his right shoulder to his wife, who was sitting not far behind. He smiled as if to reassure her. Quote, I'm sorry you are having to go through this, he told his wife in the video. After Kathy Allen left the room, Holman brought up the evidence again. This time, he seemed angry and was screaming and cursing at Allen. Quote, do the right thing, he told Allen, adding that he should not put his family through such an ordeal. Also, I will say that it is best to not, in my opinion, and from talking to people that are really, into these trial chats and, professionals, that it is best not to be in a police interrogation and to have an attorney defend you instead. So, talk to an attorney instead. And if you were to be, or anybody were to be in this sort of situation, especially if somebody's innocent, to never, ever, ever confess that you did something. Sort of like in Christianity, we talk about being tempted to do something and you resist temptation. But as I said, that's just a fun fact I wanted to throw out there. And continuing. At this point, Allen also seemed to lose his temper. Quote, you want to F with me, he also said, but leave my wife out of this, Allen told Holman. Leave me out of this, he also says. Quote, no, you're involved with this. Your effing round is there, Rick Holman said. No, Allen responded, it's not. Toward the end of the interrogation, Allen decided he was done talking. Quote, I'm done, he told Holman. Arrest me, he says. Quote, I'd be happy to, Holman said. Effing happy to. Allen was arrested that day. Thank you for your and A blank Alan grew agitated with first confrontation with police. Testimony over the past few days revealed that Alan was not on law enforcement's radar. For 5 years after the murders, their investigation into Alan began on September 21, 2022, when a volunteer clerk came across an old tip sheet from when Alan himself told police that he was on the trail the same afternoon the girls disappeared. And with this case, there is so much ambiguity to it and mystery to it, and it seems like there's a lead, but then it doesn't seem there's a lead. Then this comes up, and then it seems that it doesn't come up, in my opinion. So basically, it just keeps on, as the evidence is being shown, it's very intense fighting back and forth, and we will see how the defense does, we'll see how the prosecution does, and whoever is responsible, if it's Alan, the alleged person that did this, or whoever it was, can be brought to justice. And I'll be continuing to cover this. Thank you for watching this edition of my covering of the Delphi trial. Comment below your thoughts. Thank you.